The observation deck of the Kraith warship hummed with tension as Commander Vexar's claws scraped against the metallic floor. His species, the Kraith, had conquered 17 star systems through sheer dominance and pack hierarchy. Yet here he stood watching something that defied every instinct bred into his warrior bones. The human sat cross-legged on the floor of the nursery chamber, her fragile frame dwarfed by the reinforced walls designed to contain Kraith younglings. Mira, that's what she called herself, had been aboard for only 3 cycles, a prisoner of war from the recent skirmish on Epsilon Prime. She should have been in the brig, awaiting interrogation. Instead, she was surrounded by his cubs, all 7 of them. Vexar's second-in-command, Thrax, stood beside him, mandibles clicking nervously. "Commander, this is unprecedented. The cubs have never— I can see what they're doing." "Thrax." Vexar's voice rumbled like distant thunder. The smallest cub, Ren, was perched on Mira's shoulders, tiny claws tangled gently in her dark hair. The human didn't flinch, didn't cry out in pain as she should have. She simply continued the strange sounds she'd been making, singing, she called it. The melody was alien, soft where Kraith war chants were harsh, flowing where theirs were jagged. The other cubs had formed a circle around her, their bioluminescent markings pulsing in sync with the rhythm. Even Kayla, the most aggressive of the litter, lay with her head resting against Mira's knee, eyes half closed in contentment. "This is a manipulation tactic," Vexar growled, though doubt crept into his certainty. "Humans are known deceivers. She's using some kind of chemical warfare, pheromones perhaps." "Scans show nothing, Commander," Thrax interrupted carefully. "No toxins, no biological agents, just her." Vexar's pride burned. He was the alpha. When he called, the pack answered. When he bellowed, the cubs came running. It was the natural order, encoded in their DNA through millennia of evolution. Yet for 3 cycles, every time he'd attempted to summon his offspring, they'd turned their small heads toward the human instead. It was intolerable. He activated the chamber's communication panel. His voice boomed through the speakers, carrying the subharmonic frequencies that triggered instinctive obedience in Kraith young. "Cubs, to me." Now 6 heads lifted. 6 pairs of luminous eyes turned toward the observation window. For a heartbeat, Vexar felt triumph surge through his chest. Then little Ren chirped from Mira's shoulders, and one by one the cubs looked away. Back to her. Back to the fragile human who should have been prey, not protector. Thrax shifted uncomfortably. "Permission to speak freely, Commander?" "Denied. Sir, I must insist. We've been observing the human's interactions with the cubs. She's not dominating them. She's not using fear or force. She's doing something else entirely." "What?" Vexar demanded, rounding on his second. What could possibly override pack instinct? Thrax's mandibles clicked in what might have been the Kraith equivalent of uncertainty. "We don't have a word for it in our language, Commander. The humans call it gentleness." The word was foreign, translated roughly by the ship's AI. Vexar turned back to the window, watching as Mira carefully lifted Ren from her shoulders and set the cub down. The youngling immediately climbed back up, making contented chirping sounds. The human laughed, a sound without threat, without dominance display. "Gentleness," Vexar repeated, tasting the concept like poison. "Weakness, you mean?" "Perhaps," Thrax said quietly. "But if it's weakness, Commander, why are your cubs choosing it over strength?" The question struck deeper than any combat wound. Vexar had been raised in the traditional way. Harsh discipline, constant testing, survival of the strongest. His own alpha had ruled through fear and power. It had made the Kraith the terror of known space. Yet here was this human possessing none of their advantages. No claws, no armor-plated hide, no alpha pheromones. She couldn't even survive in standard Kraith atmospheric conditions without her breather unit. And his cubs loved her. The realization crashed over him like a tidal wave. Not respected her. Not feared her. Loved her. "Open the chamber," Vexar said suddenly. "Commander, open it. That's an order." The door hissed open. Vexar stepped through, his massive form filling the doorway. The cubs' heads swiveled toward him, and this time, several whimpered and pressed closer to Mira. His own offspring, seeking protection from their alpha. The human, to her credit, didn't cower. She met his eyes, those impossibly soft eyes that held no challenge, no submission. Just steadiness. Her hand rested protectively on Kayla's head. You've stolen them from me, Vexar said, surprised by the lack of rage in his own voice. Mira shook her head slowly. I haven't stolen anything, Commander. They were afraid. So I gave them what they needed. And what is that? She looked down at the cubs clustered around her, then back at him. Safety. Comfort. Someone who doesn't expect them to be warriors before they're ready to walk. The words cut because they were true. Kraith tradition demanded strength from the moment of hatching. Cubs were tested, pushed, culled if they showed weakness. It had been the way for countless generations. But as Vexar looked at his offspring, truly looked at them, he saw something he'd missed before. They weren't just healthy. They were thriving. Their markings were brighter, their movements more confident. Even little Ren, who'd been marked as the runt, showed vigor he'd never displayed before. How? The question emerged as a whisper, stripped of command, just curiosity. Mira smiled, and somehow that gentle expression held more power than any battle roar. I just love them, Commander. That's all. Vexar stood silent for a long moment. Around him, the ship hummed with the machinery of war, the tools of dominance his species had perfected. But in this small chamber, a human had accomplished what all their weapons could not. She had shown them a different kind of strength. Perhaps, Vexar thought as he watched Ren climb back onto Mira's shoulders, the humans weren't weak after all. Perhaps they were something far more dangerous. They were kind, and kindness, he was beginning to understand, could conquer what force could not.